So would you say these the Reform voters, are they Conservative voters or are they Labour voters, or is it mixed?
Completely mixed.
You think it's mixed?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was talking to voters I stood in Audley and Chesterton in North Staffordshire.
Yes.
As you know, Chesterton, traditionally very much a Labour area.
Yeah, it is.
Very heavily wanted reform. Audley, more mixed. It had Conservative borough councillors. It had a Conservative county councillor before. It's had Liberal Democrats in the past as well. Again, so a different area, different type of area.
That's true.
But again, reform polled extremely well in both places.
Yeah. I guess I can see it definitely is mixed. Let's say, for example, is it Ashfield seat, the MP there? That's a Reform seat. That was, traditionally a Labour seat, but then went Conservative, then went Reform, and it's more like working class communities, which you would think is Labour, and yes, is now gone Reform. So I understand that point. I guess I'm thinking, from what reading I had done, maybe these people who have voted Reform, they would be maybe not economically conservative, but they're socially conservative. And actually they feel that the Conservative Party have not maybe done enough to challenge or maintain social conservative values. Let's just say, for example, like tackling the rise in the woke agenda, or in more equality type politics or identity politics. The Conservative hasn't quite balanced that out at the end of the day. Or let's say representing local British or British-born people. So do you truly feel that the Reform vote is actually split Labour and Conservative, or do you think actually these are people that have voted Conservative? Because we've seen it I understand Labour have won seats at the general election, but of course they haven't increased their voter share. But the Conservatives did lose their voter share. And Reform had gained a lot of that, and maybe only gained a few seats. And then also in this local election, I understand most of the seats were Conservative seats. Hence we've seen that, it's the collapse of the Conservative Party. But we could see a change in future elections when it's more Labour seats, then Labour will lose their votes. So do you truly see that actually these Reform voters, they are a mix of both the parties? Or do you think it's more Conservative?
It's definitely a mix.
Okay.
Whether the balance is probably more slightly on the Conservative side than ex-Labour voters, but there's certainly some ex-Lib Dem voters there as well.
Yeah.
So I think you've absolutely identified that where people are coming from. That they are, on the one hand, what you might call more socially conservative. That they believe, for instance, in freedom of speech. They don't want people to be arrested for saying the wrong thing in the pub. They've seen the police knock on people's doors when they shouldn't be knocking on people's doors, and they're proudly patriotic. They understand that this is not what Britain is. Britain's a place that believes in freedom, that believes people get on with their lives, get on with their faith or lack of faith or whatever they have, but you don't bring the state in for that unless they're really doing something which is criminal, and saying the wrong thing, unless it's inciting violence in a big way, is not criminal. So that's definitely what they believe in. That's not a left or right thing. That's I agree with that totally. And then probably you're right that on the economic side, there's a mixture. There are some who are very libertarian, low taxes, cut public expenditure, and you've seen Nigel Farage say things like that in the past.
Yes,
he's changed because he recognises that he has to reflect his voters who've gone up tremendously in percentage. So, whereas the if you like many of the Reform voters believe in they want a national health service. They want support. They do believe in hard work. They want to earn money, but they want to know that when there's a problem like COVID or the economic crash, that the state is there for them and doesn't let them go into destitution. So you have this kind of social conservative, economic, slightly centre left I would say, but caveat that with there's quite a lot of reform people who would be pretty Thatcherite in their economic, what would be called Thatcherite in their economic approach. So you will find all political parties, as I've said before, are coalitions. Reform is no exception. Reform is a big coalition of various people, and that's what they will find difficult, as all political parties do, and you've seen they've begun to find that with some of their MPs. Managing such a broad coalition, whether it's Keir Starmer trying to manage his party as he failed to do a couple of weeks ago in Parliament. He had to change his
welfare bill.
Yeah, exactly. And as the Conservative Party found very much in opposition, reform, if they get into government, which is certainly a possibility, they will find the same, because they will find it's one thing being in opposition and being able to say, we're not any of you lot, we're the ones you haven't tried, try us. If they ever got into government, then they would have that challenge. Now, that's why I think Mr Farage has understood that he has to be more careful in the way he describes his economic policies compared with when he was polling 10%
by himself.
Yes.
And he could maybe say what he wants.
Yes.
Now, maybe because he's sniffing that eye,
yes.
maybe have a chance.
Yeah.
He's not even broadened his views, but just realised who his base is.
And look, when I said the Conservative Party was a fairly pragmatic party, then you could say the same about that's his approach.
Reform
so I'm not necessarily criticising that. I'm simply saying that is what is happening.
That is what is happening.